Good morning. Just a couple of seconds here before we get started with the webinar today, letting everyone join from the waiting room and connecting their audio. Good morning. Just letting everyone still connect their audio. I'm seeing that number still rise just a little bit. Okay, looks like it's starting to slow down, so I'll go ahead and get us started. So welcome to this Workforce Wednesday webinar. My name is Kirsten Bayer, and I'm with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. I am your moderator and facilitator today, and I'm joined by my colleague Antonio Gomez, who will be on for technical support this morning. So thank you to all of you who have joined us for this webinar on the self-assessment revisions and guide. We are joined by representatives from my team, from DCEO, and from KEB. So I'll let them introduce themselves here in a second. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. So we are on Zoom webinar. So you as an attendee do not have the ability to unmute yourself or turn on your video. So this is more of a presentation formatted platform. If you do have questions, comments, or concerns during the webinar, we do invite your participation by using the chat or the Q&A function on today's Zoom webinar. You can locate both of those on your Zoom toolbar. And then myself, Antonio, and the presenters will help to moderate and facilitate those questions when we pause for Q&A towards the end of the webinar today. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording and presentation slides will be provided for you after today's webinar. And that will be on our Zoom or on our ICSPS Illinois Workforce Academy website, as well as Illinois WorkNet uploads it to their website too. Following today's webinar, you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow, which will have the link, the URL link to the website where you can find the recording and presentation, as well as a survey link. And we do invite your participation in those surveys. I myself go through all of the follow-up surveys from all of our Workforce Wednesday webinars, and I present that data to our WIOA Professional Development Committee. I sit out on that, as well as our director, Amy Julian, who facilitates the WIOA PD committee. And we do use your feedback from the presentations that you evaluate, as well as there's a question on the survey where you can talk about any future professional development that you would like to receive. And we can, as a professional development committee, help to plan that so we can really meet the system where you all are at and really understand what your needs for PD are and hopefully provide that professional development for you in the upcoming year. I'm going to run our two beginning polls as we get started. And I'll go ahead and launch those now. So you should be able to see them. The first one is, where is your local area? And the second one is, which partner do you best represent today? And then it looks like the chat, Antonio, could you fix that for me potentially? Looks like the chat is only able to type in for hosts and panelists. Could you change it to everyone could type in the chat? That way, if the audience has questions, they can type in the chat as well. And we'll give it just a couple more seconds for those polls. You should be able to scroll and answer both of them. All right. Looks like everyone has gone ahead and answered, so I'll end that poll and share the results. Looks like most of you are joining us from up north in this state, but we have a good span across the state as well, with great representation in Southern Illinois as well as statewide. And then a lot of Title I and III folks are on today, but we also have representation from Title IV and II and other WIOA partners too. So thank you to all of you for joining us and just spending your time with us this morning. And it looks like the chat is open, so you can feel free to type that. And then the PowerPoint will be provided after the webinar. I saw a question in the chat for that. And I'll hand off to my colleague, Sarah Blaylock, to get the webinar started.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Blaylock with ICSPS, and thank you, Kirsten, for getting us going. I'm going to pass it off to Drew and Laura to introduce themselves, and then Drew can take it away.
Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Drew Thomason. I am with KEB, We are a neutral convener and facilitator of statewide activities for WIOA here in Illinois.
Good morning. I'm Laura Dahm. I'm with the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, and I'm here to assist with the presentation and to provide any response to questions put in the Q&A or the chat.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Drew.
So real quick, we will go over the agenda for our webinar today, and then I'll explain a few other things and then hand it back to Sarah. So the first thing we're going to cover is the relation of the service integration self-assessment to other planning and compliance documents. Then we're going to talk about the self-assessment itself, go through the objectives of it, the relationship to the revised service integration policy, some background, general instructions for it, where you can find it, and a suggested timeline to complete the self-assessment. We have a slide at the end for questions, but if you have questions as we move through this presentation, please put those either in the chat or the Q&A. There was a question in the chat. Is there a link to the updated assessment tool? And we will cover that today. So quickly, we want to talk about how the new self-assessment tool relates to other planning and compliance documents. So it is specifically referenced in the updated region and local planning guide issued earlier this month. Local areas are asked to submit as part of their local plan their completed self-assessment document. Additionally, there is a statement, as you can see here in number 2, that local areas must include in the document. And the thought behind this is that both of these are planning tools, and the planning and thought that goes into your self-assessment should be reflected in the other planning tools, specifically your local plans. You want to go to the next slide? So again, kind of referencing some of the objectives of the self-assessment tool, and just like the region and local planning process, we want to make sure that the local partners in your area are talking about how to operationalize service integration, how they can improve service integration, and how they can better serve customers through improved operationalized service integration. We also want this tool to capture examples, useful ideas, and suggestions from partners that can inform action planning and contribute to the identification of state improvement opportunities. So not just in your local area, but where we can find best practices that can be shared throughout the state. Again, we want to convey a vision of complete service integration and kind of demonstrate how service integration is being operationalized throughout Illinois.
All right, thanks, Drew. So as I hope most of you know, the Continuous Improvement Committee of the Iowa created the Service Integration Work Group in 2022 to revise the service integration policy. It was approved this year. It contains 7 goals, the same amount as the original policy, but now each goal has local application points to help support these goals. The self-assessment was then developed to mirror the policy. Local areas will be asked to detail their progress on each application point. So on the left side of your screen, you'll see the background of the self-assessment. So the 2019 self-assessment was created to evaluate local areas' level of service integration. It utilized the WINTAC continuum of service integration, which partners determine their own level of service integration. On the right-hand side, you'll see the major revision points. So using a template similar to the 2018 assessment, the revisions focus on identifying an area's progress toward application points of each of the goals and outcomes of the policy. The revisions tie together 3 main documents of the 2019 self-assessment process into one document to streamline the self-assessment process. The revised self-assessment also lets the completer indicate if they wish or need technical assistance in specific areas.
And Sarah, if it's all right, I just want to add, I think what you'll see over the next couple of slides is that there was an eye towards making this a more streamlined and simpler process for partners. And I think we want to continue the spirit of the service integration that started in this process that started in 2019, but recognize and see how we can make this a less burdensome process for local areas, and hopefully make it a smoother process to go through.
Yep. So as Drew said, we tried to streamline this as much as possible and to make it useful for other document planning that you'll have this coming year. So currently on the screen are all the documents that were included in the previous self-assessment. I won't go through all of them, but this is just this background. So on the left side of the screen, you'll now see what's included in the self-assessment guide. You'll have the service integration policy, a recommended schedule of planning events, a partner list, and the service integration self-assessment. And those were created from the documents that are on the right hand of the screen. All right, and along with the revised documents, the self-assessment process is different than before also. The first step is to gather all LWIA partners and community stakeholders, such as employers, to meet and conduct the service integration self-assessment, which is Appendix D to the self-assessment guide. You ascertain the level of integration for each of the 30 application points, identify specific tactics that will be used to address each point, name the partners or organizations who will be responsible, outline expected outcomes, establish a timeline, determine if you have any questions or a need for technical assistance, develop a consensus around which goals and activities should be prioritized in your LWIA, and agree on priority actions needed to move the needle on the most strategically important service integration goals. Step 2 is an LWID must review and evaluate the completed service integration self-assessment and utilize the discussions during the self-assessment process to frame the vision in the local and regional plans. So you'll really use the self-assessment process to build your local and regional plans. And then how you submit it. So as on the screen, it says any subsequent modifications of the results of the service integration self-assessment are to be incorporated in local planning. A copy of the documentation associated with the self-assessment process must be submitted as an appendix to the plan. And now we'll get into the actual guide. So I'll first talk through how and where to access the guide, and then I'll stop sharing. I'll share the link via the Zoom chat and then reshare my screen as I walk through the webpage with you. The self-assessment is now located on the Illinois WorkNet local and regional planning page. That's the first image on the left-hand side of your screen. You'll scroll to the bottom of that page, and under service integration, you'll find the guide and assessments. So and the link here, once the PowerPoint is shared, that will also let you get to this page. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I am going to share the link in the chat. Now I'm going to reshare and walk you through it. So that link, does everyone see the local and regional planning page? Yes, okay. So the link will bring you to this page. You'll scroll to the bottom, and here is the service integration policy self-assessment guide and instrument. When you click on this, it'll automatically download a copy of the service integration policy tool, and you'll see it in your downloads bar. I have a Mac, so I apologize if that is different for PCs. Regardless, it will be downloaded, and it should bring you to this. Once you save this copy, you'll be able to put in or adjust, type in your responses. And I'll zoom in just a little. Here's the guide. Starts with a table of contents, an overview, definitions, and then your outcomes, and then the process of completing the self-assessment and the submission. On page 9 is the service integration policy. And then if we scroll through the service integration policy, sorry if you all are getting seasick. On page 17, we have the recommended schedule of planning events. We have then the partner list. And on page 22, Appendix D, this is the cover letter for your submission. Because this is a fillable form, you'll see these little grayed out boxes. When you click on them, you can start typing. And this is a self-assessment. For each of the goals, you'll have a table that has the application points. Underneath the application points is a question of if the application point is occurring, not occurring, or if it's not being planned. You'll then click on this gray bar to choose 1, 2, or 3 for the coinciding application point. Then for each of the application points, the self-assessment asks you to detail your actual strategies towards this application point. You click and you type. You then can say if you need technical assistance for this application point. If you do, you can type it here. And the same thing for each of the application points for each of the goals. I'm going to look in the chat. Yeah. And Laura put in the chat, the service integration work group reduced the number of appendices to the self-assessment to make it more streamlined and easier for local partners to discuss and complete. All right. Are there any, I know we said we wait to the end, but I'm going to ask if there's any questions on this document right now.
I see someone has their hand up. If we can get them unmuted. And while that goes on, the other thing I will add is for those of you who are around in 2019 and went through this process previously, if you remember, the previous process was each partner went off and did something like this on their own and then came together and did it as a group. And we thought, the work group thought that one way to streamline this was to have everyone move ahead to that working together from the very start on just one document. And Sandra, did you have a question?
Yes, I'm sorry. Could you show really quick after when you get to the web page, how did you click to get here? I kind of got lost.
Okay, let me go back. So we're at the web page. Then you scroll to the bottom of the screen. And in the middle column under service integration, you'll see the service integration policy, self-assessment guide, and instrument. You'll click on that and it should automatically download. On a Mac, you'll have it in your downloads bar. And once you click that, it should open up a copy I'll share like this. Then in order to manipulate it or actually use it and input your responses, you would hit duplicate and save. And I've saved many copies, so now it's very confused at me. So on your end, you should hopefully not have that many. Did that answer? Okay, perfect. Are there any other questions? No. Okay. I'm going to pop back to the PowerPoint. Drew, do you see the timeline now?
Yes, now I do. So on your screen, you'll see a suggested timeline for this process. The biggest consideration for your timeline regarding the completion of the self-assessment tool is that this is to be done concurrently or maybe a little before the development of specifically your local plans. So this should be part of that larger planning process that is looking over the next 4 years. We have some suggestions on how to complete this. You can see on your screen there in terms of starting now and running through the development of your state plan. The one thing that we will add is that you see in February, that is when region and local plans are posted for public comment. The self-assessment tool does not need to be posted as part of that for public comment. You can, if your local area so chooses, but the state is not considering this something that is necessary to be included with that posting for public comment, simply because the concepts that are developed as part of the self-assessment tool will already be included in your local plan. This is much more of a planning tool for local areas as opposed to a public document. And then along with your region and local plans, are due at the end of March. Does anyone have any questions on this, either on the process for completing it or the tool itself?
Looks like LaDonna asked, so the self-assessment is not included as an appendix to the local plan?
No, it should be included as an appendix to the local plan. So when you're submitting your local plan, it needs to be included as an appendix when you're submitting it at the end of March. But we are saying that you do not have to include it as part of the document that goes up for public comment. Well, you just wouldn't attach it.
Mhm. And you are also welcome to put it out for public comment.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's just not necessary if you feel like you don't want to put that working document out for public comment.
Didn't we have a question on a specific piece of the tool?
Yeah, it says application point D and goal 1 is confusing, so I'll pull that up in just 1 second. What's the goal for that? If we're getting feedback, I'm assuming negative might be a part of it. And Caroline, I'm guessing that your follow-up comment is also to the, okay. So sorry, make this bigger. Partner staff will provide system users access to the option for feedback outside of an annual input process and be made aware of complaints and appeal rights. Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act partners will not retaliate against users who provide negative feedback, complaints, or make appeals. What is the goal for this? So I think this is really to make sure that, and the policy work group had people from each level of the system, and this was really to ensure that that local areas were using customer input, customer feedback, customer surveys to create more customer-centered design programming or services within their local area. And we wanted to also make sure that they had access to their appeal rights if they were denied services, et cetera, in order to make it inclusive and also more helpful for the local area.
And Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong here, but these are all these goals and application points mirror what's in the updated service integration policy, correct?
Yes. And then Lisa's put, what do you feel is an estimated time investment it will take for LWIAs to complete the self-assessment more than one meetings, total hours. I think it will be helpful when trying to organize meetings to complete the tool and figure out schedules that will work for all partners. I think it will depend, and Drew, you can chime in, and Laura also, but I think it will depend on what is currently being planned in your local area or what is also occurring. If you have a lot of things to plan, if a lot of these application points aren't currently happening, it might take you longer because the planning process will take longer than just describing what's currently happening. Drew, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, as far as the total meetings, there should be at least 2. So the first meeting would be to go through this document for all the partners in the local area. And then the completed self-assessment needs to be circulated to your local board and all of the partners again for the review and comment. And then there would be another meeting to incorporate any of that review or comments or edits offered by either board members or partners. As far as the total hours, again, as Sarah said, I think that will be just different based on local areas. But I would plan on that initial meeting to be multiple hours, and then the follow-up meeting will really depend on what feedback you receive. Yeah, and as Laura said, those steps are outlined in the updated guide.
And again, I put in the chat that once you download this document, you read the updated policy and the guide, and you go through the self-assessment document. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to TA team, ROET regional managers, myself, so that we can help either guide you or get you to the right person that can guide you to respond to these questions. And remember that when we had this work group, it was made up of all of our core partners. And so some of these responses, some of these questions may be geared more towards their response and their input versus from a Title I perspective, because this is more than just Title I. So just keep that in mind as you're going through that this is a collaboration between the core partners.
And we have kind of 2 similar questions coming in. How do we handle partners who are not engaged, and what does a local area do if a required partner does not participate? I think the first thing is to go to your one-stop operator to try and encourage them to participate. And if I think the first thing you do is you try to handle that at a local level, but if after that you continue to have problems with participation, to bring that to the WIOA TA team's attention, and then the TA team will take a larger approach to bringing in people. And then Caroline had a question about the iWeb evaluation toolkit. Oh, and Sarah beat me to it. I had the link ready to go. So Sarah put in the link to get that toolkit.
And I can go ahead and share my screen again. Carolyn, that link will bring you to the Illinois Workforce Academy. Am I showing the right screen? And then this is the evaluation toolkit that the evaluation work group of the iWeb created, and they've done a really good job in outlining and detailing how you use that tool. And I'll make sure that's added to the slide deck.
Can we have Sarah Graham's mic unmuted?
Yes, 1 second.
All right, Sarah, Sarah Graham, I think you should be able to unmute yourself.
Lower hand.
All right, we can hear you, Sarah.
Sorry, that was an accident.
That's all right.
And then Laura put, it's up to the LWIP to complete this as a part of their planning process. Are there any more questions?
I see a comment that it's more than just Title I, but it's up to Title I to get all compliance completed. And again, this, especially with planning and service integration, this really needs to be a shared project by all partners. And as Laura pointed out, it's also up to your local board to complete this as part of the planning process. So if there is ever a problem with partner engagement, again, our first suggestion is go to your one-stop operator and use that avenue to engage partners. And if that continues to be a problem, elevate that to the state TA team, the WIOA TA team, and we will, as a TA team, make sure that local partners are engaged.
That's the only questions. I'm going to share my screen one more time for this contact information. Sorry, it's tiny. So as Drew said, Drew is available to contact, and Laura and myself are also available. If you have any questions, you'll receive this slide deck with the follow-up to this webinar, and we'll work to make sure you don't have any more questions as you move forward through this process. Drew, do you have anything to add? Or Laura?
Nope.
I do not.
Okay. Oh, just to clarify, this is due as a part of the plan.
Correct. This is something that should be happening. This is a process that is tied to the plan in that it is due as a part of an appendix to the plan. And it's a planning process that should happen along with that development of the local plan.
Yes, that was the goal. The thought process was by doing the self-assessment, you see where you need to go, what you need to work on, things that need to be accomplished, and that will help you develop the content of your local and regional planning, since that document is to be forward-looking. So that was the thought process of why to tie it to the planning process.
And then LaDonna's noted, are we required to submit anything additional, such as a signed cover letter or anything else?
So it's just appendix. The thing that you need to submit as part of your local plan is Appendix D. Yeah, and Sarah has it here. So on the Word document that you get, it starts on page 22, and it goes through the end of that document. So pages 22 through 56 are what is required as the appendix to the local plan.
Okay. It doesn't look like we're getting any more questions. Let me check the Q&A and the participants. Okay, well, if there's no further questions, You'll receive this PowerPoint with Drew, myself, and Laura's contact information. So you can send us questions if you have them. Oh. And we can separate the pages. What is the report process and results of presenting? What is the report in the process and results of presented to the LWIP checkbox? Drew, do you?
LaDonna, could you, sorry, we've got a spam bot in the chat. Someone could please remove that person. But LaDonna, could you clarify what you mean? LaDonna? Okay, there we go.
Page 22.
So that would be the state report on the process. Do you mean the report on the process and results presented to the LWIB? That first check in the bottom box.
Yes, that's what she's saying.
Okay, no, I think so. So that is much how you would kind of submit and present on the local plan to your local board. The results of this need to be presented to the local board for their review. Yeah, thanks, Laura. And there's a description of that in the guide, the full document. Look, can I ask the group, since Caroline already brought up the point of separating out that Appendix D, would it be useful to have, so we really have kind of 4 documents here. Would it be, or maybe 5, depending on how you look at it, but would it be helpful to separate out everything into separate documents? Or does having one document plus what is needed to be submitted to as part of the local plan, is that good enough? Okay, so we will just pull out the actual self-assessment tool from this guide. So we'll create 2 documents that will live on that web page. One will be the guide, and then we'll pull out that Appendix D as a separate document, because that is what you, including the cover letter. So starting on what you see on your screen, we'll pull that out as a separate document for you.
But I want to caution that the document in its entirety should be presented to the partners at that first meeting that Drew spoke of, so that they are familiar with the policy and the process before you go to complete this guide. We don't want just this guide part, this Appendix D, to be the only thing that they see, because there won't be anything to go along with it for them to have context.
Laura, there's a question for you. Where in the guide does it explain if the LWIB needs to review or approve? I'm trying to scan
I
through.
think it's step 4 or something like that. if you go back up into the guide itself.
Okay, I'm going to scroll.
Somewhere in there. Okay, there's the process, and then it talks about gather all of them together, develop consensus, and then evaluate it, and then use it to frame. And I think I thought we put that in there somewhere.
I believe that's step 2, correct?
Step 2, yeah. Yes, LWIB must, yes, review and evaluate. So, yes. That's why it would more than likely be the one-stop operator that would present that to the board. It does not need a board vote. It is just a review. It is to be used to create the needed guidance and language for the regional and local plans.
Sarah, you're muted.
Sorry, the mailman is here and my puppy is not a fan. So, do you want to give it a minute, or are we ready to sign off? Do you have anything more to say, Drew or Laura?
No, just as you take the opportunity to look through this, if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to us and we will assist in any way we can.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. And I appreciate Drew and Sarah and Laura for being on to answer everyone's questions. Just to reiterate, today's session was recorded and will be up on our Illinois Workforce Academy website, as well as Illinois WorkNet posts to their website too. And then the follow-up email tomorrow will have the follow-up survey in it, as well as the URL where you can access the recording and PowerPoint slides from today. And I think that's all we have. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.